Scugog Council costs over $319,000 in 2023. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Scugog. A report on council member salaries and benefits was included in the agenda for Scugog Council's meeting on Monday, March 25th. It indicated Scugog Council members cost the municipality $319,607 in total in remuneration, benefits, and expenses in 2023. Mayor Wilma Watton made $52,690 and claimed $1,602 in conference costs, $356 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. She did not claim any mileage expenses. Regional Councillor Ian McDougall earned $36,803 and claimed $1,757 in conference costs, $45 in mileage expenses, $234 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. Councillors Jana Guido, Robert Rock, Terry Cohen, and Harold Wright all earned a salary of $33,465. Ward 1 Councillor David Leroy was just under his counterparts at $33,388. Ward 1 Councillor David Leroy was just under his counterparts at $33,388. Councillor Guido, who also serves as Scugog's deputy mayor, claimed $1,945 in conference costs, $233 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. She did not claim any mileage costs. Councillor Leroy claimed $36 in conference costs, $234 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. Councillor Rock claimed $2,152 in conference costs, $415 in mileage expenses, $236 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. Councillor Cohen claimed $1,677 in conference costs, $417 in mileage expenses, $234 in cell phone expenses, and $28 in other expenses. Councillor Wright claimed $1,742 in conference costs, $315 in mileage expenses, and $28 in other expenses. He did not claim any cell phone costs. The majority of council members earned $5,282 each in benefits. Kawartha Lakes Council TV pilot project a permanent fixture of the municipality. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Kawartha Lakes. The City of Kawartha Lakes is making the pilot project for all terrain vehicles, ATVs, on city roads permanent. The decision was made at a meeting on Tuesday, March 19th. The project saw approved routes for ATVs to travel along set roads in Pontypool, Lindsay, Omemee, Cameron, and Janetville. Originally, Ward 5 Councillor Eric Smeaton made a motion to defer the subject for 1 month. However, that motion failed to find enough support to pass. Then he tried to renew it as a 1-year pilot project. I've heard an enormous uproar for an entire year, and you've heard some excellent samples of the true discussion to be had. These people want the pilot to end for Lindsay, so they may be disappointed, some people even in what I'm offering, Councillor Smeaton explained. Then he spoke against making the pilot project permanent law, stating it could lead to more residents asking for more streets to be opened up for use for ATVs. Lindsay did not want this. That data we have. I really encourage you to support a councillor who knows his constituents. Ward 2 Councillor Pat Warren said, the project parameters need to be adjusted, so it's easier for people to lodge a complaint. Ward 7 Councillor Charlie McDonald spoke in favor of keeping the program going and not scrapping it based on some residents' complaints. Everybody has to have a piece of the pie here, and everybody has to work together. I can't believe if we took this energy of saying yes and no all the time and put it into working together, we would solve most of the problems. Believe me, we would, said Charlie McDonald. However, Councillor Smeaton's second motion also failed when it was brought to a vote. Ward 8 Councillor Tracy Richardson made a motion to have the pilot project become permanent. We need to work together. We're a community of communities, with a whole bunch of interests, and we need to compromise and find that balance and not choose one over the other, So, we do need to have better partnerships, and we do need to improve our stewardships, and I think we are. Brock's Rural Road Rehab Program moving to next phase. Daryl Knight, The Standard. Brock. Brock Rural Roads will continue to see improvements this year, as the township recently announced its Rural Road Rehabilitation Plan will soon be moving into Phase 2. The Rural Road Rehabilitation Plan was originally implemented in 2023, with the goal of repairing long-standing issues on roads which have been previously double service treated. This initial phase covered several areas of Brock, including sections of Concession Road 11, Concession Road 13, and Concession Road 14. The reconstruction efforts on these roadways have been deemed successful, and this year will see the gravel sections return to being double surface treated for a smooth transition. As the municipality enters Phase 2 of the Rural Road Rehabilitation Plan, the focus in 2024 will be on sections of Concession Road 11 and Concession Road 14. As well, sections of Simcoe Street/Town Line between Regional Road 48 and Regional Road 15 are planned to be upgraded. This work will be carried out in conjunction with the City of Kawartha Lakes, with each municipality making equal contributions to the project. The road rehab project is a 4-year plan which will see historic levels of investment to repair Brock's hard-topped back roads. A similar project was carried out in Uxbridge starting in 2011 with tremendous success. The investment this year includes $550,000 to complete the work in Phase 1, as well as a further $538,000 to the new work in Phase 2. There is also $375,000 included in the budget for gravel replacement. Regional Councillor Mike Jubb was enthusiastic about the project and reminded residents to be patient as this important infrastructure work is carried out later this year. I ask our residents for patience as we endeavour to repair the issues from years ago which were never completed correctly, commented Councillor Jubb. Unfortunately, this costs us all and will take a few years to fix.
Release. Most of us don't think about it in our day-to-day, but release is a thing which doesn't come easy. Try going up to a friend and attempt to grab something they're holding in their hand and watch their reaction. Then be sure to tell them you were just conducting an experiment. You've heard of groups who have a demonstration of trust falls? Well, this is all about release. It reveals our ability to trust another with something of ourselves. Let's examine this a little closer. I'm sure you've heard it said, trust isn't given, it's earned. Certainly there is something to be said for any of us to become trustworthy as an individual, yet it should never get to the point where we're jumping through hoops for another to finally open up. When it gets to this point, then there is likely also a problem in the life of the one who is in the position of extending the trust. Damaged life experiences have erroneously taught them to always be looking for the other shoe to drop, a position of predetermined distrust, a very lonely place. This means a person is responding internally to old stimuli. They are superimposing their expectations of past occurrences on this new situation or person, sometimes even distrusting themselves in a new experience. They have developed a trigger, a trap, very scientific until it's not. Of course, in its positive form, this approach brings us to trial and error. This is how we learn to discern and understand the idea of cause and effect. Yet, when this is in the area of emotion, of which trust is composed, then it's not always as cut and dry. Science makes the assertion it is operating on the basis of empirical evidence. This means on the basis of observable, repeatable conditions, materials, and influences, bringing about consistent results. These results are then accepted as relative truths and then relied upon for use. So you could say they are then trusted by the experimenters and taught to all of us as truths. This is roughly how the basis of knowledge is built in human experience. Of course, if we are taught enough information from this knowledge base, then we begin to trust it without feeling the need to experiment ourselves. Notice it still requires experience. All the rest is merely conjecture. This is how we form cultural characteristics, political opinions, or blind belief systems. This is not to say by any means whoever has a belief system is operating blind. In fact, the very opposite may be true. Instead, there may be a large database, supporting testimony of many others, and a wealth of personal experiences others miss, Consequently, this could be knowledge. Statements attempting to diminish the experiences of others are often made by those unwilling to do the experiment in the same ways needed. This leaves no ability to validate truth, having no inclusive experience. Usually this has to do with those pesky triggers again, so there's no release to gain what new thing may be known. This is really a function of fear of the unknown and insecurity. Based on past errors, fearful expectations of change stifle the motivation to know and the genuine release for actual experience. It's very sad. Things like fear of flying, of water, of even going outside are built on extreme versions of this same thing. So what of our perception of what we experience? Can it be trusted? Well, on a general basis, only as much as the next person's. Still, it's clear we trust the judgment of outside sources for the bigger picture. However, when it comes to personal things, we tend to rely upon our own personal experiences and judgment, and are way less trusting of outside sources. The problem is, we and other humans are fallible. Even the collective experience of humanity may be an exercise in misjudgment, if you really want to follow this out to its ends. So where do we go, and how do we then release from here? The various disciplines of science have continually been challenged and corrected by free thinking, from the out-of-the-box non-follower of the crowd. Maybe not directly, as collective pride wouldn't allow it, but over time, new lines of progress spring forward, overcoming attitudes of fearful present expectations. Then there is the other side of things, where, just because this is the way we've always done it, that doesn't mean it's wrong or even outdated. The idea, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Again, this requires a genuine look at things, an unreserved look, open to unanticipated input, in order to know if something isn't actually broken in some subtle way. So, how do we know how far along the drift of the scale of anxiousness and knowledge we really are? As foreign as to the status quo kind of thinking it may seem, this will require trust. You'll find this in Hebrews 6a, paraphrase. Interesting. Trust is actually not always a thing to be earned. Sometimes it needs to be given, extended, added, almost injected. You see, without trust, we influence the data, color it. That's not scientific, is it? Truth, and so consequently honest experience, requires release to whatever is not what we want to assert. In a sense, it becomes our choice to get out of its way. Then, there is no interference from our anxious interpretations, messing up what could be revealed when stepping forward into what we don't yet know. This parallels the confusion the world has over the collective historical experience of real Christians and their actual experience of Christ. A little balance and perspective here. We all, by large majority, Christians and non alike, have gone through the same education system and learned what science knows. Still, actually, most of us who say we trust science or claim to be scientific are really not there yet. This would require each of us to do every experiment ourselves in the same environments, under the same conditions, with the same equipment, the same way as those who claimed these truths originally. Every doctor would have to do all the research over again. That's an amazing burden, and so we all function in real life on the basis of belief. This is defined as opening up to what is being shared with us, allowing ourselves to be influenced by it, and then living in it. In the same way, until an individual releases to the experimental parameters by asking Jesus to live in their spirit for the rest of their lives, as Lord of their lives, they have not entered into the experience of Christ, and so have not come to know. Until this releasing, the experience happening now cannot happen. That's in Hebrews 11:6b, paraphrase. He, biblically, is known to be God who came in the flesh, who died to purge us of our biases and their knee-jerk reactions, so we can know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's in John 8:32, in a paraphrase, in any version. This experience has a knowledge base of over 2,000 years and millions upon millions of actual, personally tested, transformative collective experiences. How much science do we usually go on, comparatively? A microfraction? Yet, in knee-jerk reactions, those who call themselves scientists attempt to discredit what they cannot know, in fact, the God who came in the flesh. This betrays the very belief foundation science says to function in. It leaves these kinds of scientists out of being scientific in their approach at all, so they can never be qualified to validate truth in regards to Christ. Without the substance, there is no experience of actual knowledge or power to live according to its truth. That's found in 2 Timothy 3, 5a and 7. We are all religious at heart. The one who says, "I am not," is stating a belief. We all function on a mixture of taught material, common experiences of others, and our own actual experiences to substantiate truth to ourselves. If we are genuine, we will not miss that last step, and so substantiate this truth for ourselves. So are you functioning freely, or will you stay in the trigger trap? What if gathering empirical data involve the unseen? What of a person who's blind? Does this mean they can't gather empirical data? Of course not. It simply means empirical data can be gathered through other channels, i.e. hearing, touch, taste, and smell. What if the evidence is in another level of empirical flow, such as the spirit or soul, and required release or trust to experience it? This flow is on a different dimensional level, just as science is discovering other dimensions exist. Some function in manners foreign to our present physical ways of detection, requiring different sensors, so to speak. Like when we were a baby, we had to integrate by experience with our physical senses, which we all take for granted now. As in learning to ride a bike, learning about the spiritual world and to navigate in it is a bit precarious. However, as children, we had others to teach and confirm our experiences in order to come to trust what we know, what we now believe, or release to as the way things are. While we never knew of gravity, we were still influenced by it every moment in our lives, and we went on blindly oblivious, functioning anyway. Then, when its reality was uncovered to us, we accommodated and interacted with it in a more deliberately useful way. Like flying a plane, we are benefited in our knowledge or experience of gravity. What we never knew before did not destroy our lives and has now brought an enhanced experience from it. God has this at heart, but first an obstruction needs to be removed. This is what Easter is all about. This coming weekend, we will experience Resurrection Weekend, aka Easter. On Friday morning at 9:30 a.m., there will be a Good Friday walk starting at Palmer Park, Port Perry. It will continue up Queen Street with various stops along the way, commemorating Christ's carrying of his cross on which he would die to take our punishment of sins upon himself. This, so when he rose past death, he could extend the opportunity to experience for ourselves his new form of resurrected life. It's very scientific. If we will individually ask him into our hearts to rule there as Lord, what a Savior we will find. Let's face it, if things are messed up or stressed up on the inside, we can't expect to judge and live healthy on the outside. What a release. Happy Resurrection. Happy 16th.
Welcome to You've Got to Be Kidding, a podcast that offers a different perspective of life around us. Listen now to author Jonathan van Bilsen.
Religion is a very personal thing, and that's why I never bring it up in my column. History, however, is quite different, and I just came across an interesting story about the head of John the Baptist. Just like any regular person, John the Baptist likely only had one head. But here's the twist. Apparently there are at least 4 spots worldwide claiming to have his skull. I'm trying to wrap my head around this statement. John the Baptist was not just your run-of-the-mill preacher. He is the man who baptized Jesus, often tagged as the forerunner of Christ. He was also Jesus' cousin. John the Baptist was so into his beliefs that he ended up dying for them. So how did he meet his end? Well, the story goes, and it seems no one disputes the fact, that he was beheaded. So what happened to his head? Well, that's where things get a bit murky, thanks to the whole relic trading era that was all the rage back in the Middle Ages. One place claiming to have his head is the Basilica of San Silvestro in Capite, Rome. Another is the Amiens Cathedral in France, which was built just to house the head a crusader supposedly brought back from Constantinople in 1206. According to the Bible's books by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, King Herod, ruler of Galilee, ordered the beheading. Why? Because John publicly denounced him for marrying his brother's ex-wife. Quite a dysfunctional family. Long story short, John's body ended up buried in Sebastia, Palestine, but his head went on a wild ride across the region, being buried and reburied by numerous entities. As Christianity spread, so did the trade in holy relics, artifacts from the past that were considered sacred. John the Baptist's head was considered the most sacred of them all, so everyone wanted a piece of it, leading to a bunch of claims and counterclaims over who had the actual relic. Fast forward to today, and we have scholars still arguing over who has the legitimate head. In my travels, I've seen the finger of St. Peter, 2 spears used to stab Christ on a cross, and a piece of Noah's Ark, a tooth belonging to Buddha, the remains of St. Christopher, and now I suppose I'll have to go on a quest to view the missing head. I'm Jonathan van Bilsen, and this is You've Got to Be Kidding.
You've Got to Be Kidding was presented by X4 Media with permission from the Standard Media Group. We endeavor to make all information contained in this program as accurate as possible at production time. X4 Media and the Standard Media Group are not responsible for any liabilities resulting from information contained in this program. For more information, please visit x4media.ca.
The Standard Podcast was produced by Greenstream Studio for the Standard newspaper.